Hello guys, it's me, Euclid. Today I'll be appearing out of my Euclid character that I used before in my other analysis videos. I'll just be telling you about the race that I love the most in the Elder Scrolls, the Dunmer. Appearance, physiology, and personality. Dunmer are of average height and build among the many humanoid species of Tamriel. They have light blue to grey skin and have red eyes and a natural resistance to high temperatures. They are noted to be quite agile and integrate destruction magic, marksmanship, and swordsmanship in equal measure in battle. They are also said to be incredibly quick-witted and can live up to 300 years. The oldest living Dunmer was Fear, who lived to be 4,000 years old. Dunmer are distrusted by the other races of Tamriel, and are often seen as selfish Daedra worshippers. However, they greatly value family and loyalty. Once a Dunmer considers you family, they'd lay down their life for you. Dunmer are also seen as quite exotic given the nature of their homeland and alien culture. Young Dunmer women, especially, are highly desirable among the other races for their beauty and promiscuity. Of course, not all Dunmer fit these stereotypes, and their disposition and nature can change depending on how, when, and where they are raised. Dunmer born in Morrowind before the Red Year were seen as proud, arrogant, and xenophobic. Dunmer can practically fit in everywhere, given the right circumstances. There's even a Dunmer who was raised by Argonians, and those who grew up in Imperial traditions are no different than their human counterparts. Save for their appearance, of course. Geography. A land begging to be explored. Morrowind, or as it was known a long time ago, Resdayn. Morrowind is normally thought of as an ashen wasteland, filled with volcanoes and ash deserts, as far as the eye can see. While most of Morrowind is covered in ash due to Red Mountain, this is not entirely true. The border between Skyrim and Morrowind is home to a mountain range called the Velothi Mountains, named after the Chimer prophet, Veleth, and like Skyrim, is cold and snowy. Morrowind is also home to fertile plains like the ones found in Cyrodiil, and swamps like in Blackmarsh. There's an island in the middle of Morrowind called Vardenfell. It's home to Red Mountain, and many cities. It's what many residents of Tamriel think of when the word Morrowind is spoken. Cities include Balmora, Ald'ruhn, and Vivec City. Notable cities on the mainland include Mournhold, Narcissus, Necrom, and Blacklight, each belonging to different great houses. History. The history of the Dunmer people begins with a group of elves called the Chimer, led by their prophet Veleth. Departed from the Somerset Isles, Veleth's teachings taught them to worship the three good Daedra: Azura, the Daedric prince of Dusk and Dawn, who taught them how to be different than other elves; Mephala, Daedric prince of sex and covert murder, teaching them the ways of evasion and assassination; and Boethia, the Daedric prince of deceit and conspiracy, teaching them everything else. The Chimer eventually made it to a land known as Resdayn, eventually called Morrowind. Early in the First Era, the Chimer were conquered by a group of humans known as the Nords. These Nords used their superior numbers and a type of magic known as the Thu'um, or the Way of the Voice, to quickly and brutally occupy the Chimer. Hundreds of years later, a Chimer leader known as Indoril Nerevar and a group of technologically advanced elves known as the Dwemer and their king Dumak formed an alliance called the First Council, and both the Chimer and the Dwemer were able to push the Nord invaders out of Resdayn. This alliance was built on deep friendship and respect between Nerevar and Dumak. Dumak's high priest and tonal architect, Kagranak, had discovered an artifact known as the Heart of Lorkhan, and using it, he would attempt to create a new mechanical god for the Dwemer, the Numidium. The traditionalist, and highly religious Chimer, saw what Kagranak was trying to achieve, and saw this as both monstrous and blasphemous. And so the Chimer and Dwemer were now at war. The Chimer suffered many defeats, however, they were able to get to Dumak's stronghold at Red Mountain. Nerevar killed his old friend, but was wounded in the process. Kagranak, in a fit of madness or rage, hit the Heart of Lorkhan. This caused the entire Dwemer race to disappear off the face of Nirn. Nerevar's ally, Vorin Dagoth, wanted Nerevar to destroy the tools that were used to tamper with the Heart of Lorkhan. Nerevar wanted to see what his advisors thought. His advisors were his friend Vivec, the warrior poet, his wife, Almalexia, and a trusted scholar, Sothasil. All of them decided to keep the tools in secret, should the Dwemer return. And they all swore before Azura that they would not use the tools. They then went back to Red Mountain to make Dagoth also take this oath. However, they found him crazed and claiming that only he could wield the tools. Nerevar was able to defeat Vorin Dagoth, and Dagoth escaped. Nerevar supposedly died in the process. Some tales say that Dagoth remained loyal, and that another fate befell Nerevar. My apologies, I don't know what came over me. Whatever the case may be, Vivek, Almalexia, and Sothasil broke their vows to Nerevar and Azura, and each struck the heart of Lorcan. Every single one of them becoming living gods. Azura, furious, appeared before the three, and the three showed no remorse for their actions. And as such, Azura cursed the tribunal and the entire Chimer race. The skin of the Chimer became ashen, and their eyes fiery. Gone were the days of the Chimer, and so began the age of the Dunmer. The three advisors, Vivek, Almalexia, and Sothasil, became the tribunal. Under the guidance of the tribunal, the Dunmer lived in peace and prosperity for thousands of years. In the 882nd year of the Second Era, Voran Dagoth re-emerged under the name Dagoth-Ur. The tribunal went back to Red Mountain in order to recharge their godly powers. However, Dagoth-Ur drove them away. They fled, and so without the heart, the tribunal's power waned, as Dagoth-Ur's power waxed. Dagoth-Ur was able to expand his influence beyond Red Mountain, and because of this, the tribunal constructed a magical barrier called the Ghost Fence to keep him contained. He planned to cover all of Morrowind and Tamriel in a disease known as the Blight, and create a second new medium called Akulikan. When Azura cursed the tribunal and the Dunmer people, she claimed that she'd reincarnate in Duril Nerevar to free the cursed false gods. This prophesied reincarnation of Nerevar is known as the Nerevarine. Tiber Septim, known by some as Talos, conquered part of Morrowind. Vivek met with Tiber Septim and agreed to make Morrowind part of the Empire as long as the Dunmer faith and self-governance remained intact. Many years after that, Emperor Uriel Septim VII sent a prisoner to Morrowind. This prisoner's race and gender was forgotten to the sands of time. The Emperor believed that this person was in fact this Nerevarine. This lowly prisoner proved themselves to be the Nerevarine by obtaining Nerevar's Moon and Star Ring, rallying House Hlalu, Redoran, and Telvanni to unite against Dagoth-Ur. The Ashlander tribes declared them Nerevar Reborn, and eventually, the Nerevarine was able to defeat Dagoth-Ur and destroy the heart of Lorcan, rendering the tribunal mortal once again. Almalexia went mad and ended up killing Sothasil, and unleashed his clockwork contraptions on her own city so that she could lure the Nerevarine there, so that she could kill them. The Nerevarine triumphed over the fallen goddess, and after that, the Nerevarine went on to defeat the Daedric Prince of the Hunt, Hercene, on the Isle of Solstheim. Still thirsty for adventure, the Nerevarine set sail for Akavir, but was never heard from again. Morrowind was hit hard during the Oblivion Crisis, and the Daedra ravaged Ald'ruhn, and many died, but they were eventually saved when Martin Septim gave his life to close the gates of Oblivion. Earlier, a meteor known as Bardau was flung at Vivek City by the Daedric Prince of Madness, Sheogorath, in response to the Tribunal's blasphemy, or out of fun. Sheogorath's like that sometimes. When Vivek disappeared after the Vardenfell crisis, there was nothing stopping Bardau from ramming into the city, causing earthquakes and causing Red Mountain to erupt. Morrowind would never be the same. Countless Dunmer died. A year after Morrowind was devastated, the Argonians invaded Morrowind as revenge for the fact that some Dunmer kept Argonian slaves for centuries. It was a bloodbath. However, House Redoran was able to stop the invaders in their tracks, and the Argonians were sent back to Blackmarsh. A few years after that, the High King of Skyrim saw the suffering of the Dunmer people, and decided to give the Isle of Solstheim to Morrowind, so that many could have a new home. Other Dunmer settled in Skyrim, especially in places near the border to Morrowind, such as Winterhold, Riften, and Windhelm. Under Jarl Ulfric's Stormcloak of Windhelm, the Dunmer are forced to live in a slum called the Grey Quarter, a reference to the color of their skin, and are often verbally harassed by residents of Windhelm.
Vivek, the warrior poet, represents the duality of the Dunmer spirit, and possibly the most confusing of the tribunal. He took Melfala's place when the Dunmer turned their backs on their old gods. He wishes to be all things, every race, every gender, but in the end, he can only be Vivek. He is the patron of artists and rogues, and is considered Morrowind's protector. He disappeared after the Nerevarine defeated Dagoth-Ur, supposedly living out the rest of his days as a mortal. Sothasil, the mystery of Morrowind, the clockwork god, and the father of mysteries. He is the patron of craftsmen and wizards. He's the most enigmatic of the tribunal and was killed by Almalexia in her madness. It was said that he perhaps loved mortals more than Vivek or Almalexia, because of how much time he'd spend guiding, counseling, and protecting them. He founded the Clockwork City beneath Mournhold, a city that supposedly existed out of space and time. He took Azura's place in the Dunmeri pantheon after the tribunal ascended to godhood. The final member of the tribunal is Almalexia, Mother Morrowind and the Healing Mother. She was Indoril Nerevar's wife. She embodies compassion and mercy. She protected the poor and the weak, and she represents the good of the Dunmer people. She was driven to madness after Dagoth-Ur was defeated, and killed Sotha-Sil. She was eventually killed by Nerevarine. She took Boetha's place in the Dunmeri pantheon.
Before the tribunal, the Dunmer, when they were still the Chimer, worshipped the Daedric princes Azura, Mephala, and Boethia. After the tribunal were ousted as false gods, the Dunmer began to worship the three good Daedra once again. They called these the Reclamations. Mephala, also known as the Web Spinner, is the Daedric prince of lies, murder, sex, and secrets. The Chimer worshipped her as one of the good Daedra, as she taught them how to evade and silently assassinate their enemies. The Morag Tong, an assassin's guild based in Morrowind, worships her as their patron. Azura, Daedric prince of dusk and dawn, and queen of the night sky, is perhaps the most benevolent of the good Daedra. She was the one who taught the Chimer the mysteries of how to be different than their predecessors, the Altmer. She is capable of great mercy and compassion, but her anger is great whenever she is betrayed or disrespected. She's responsible for turning the Chimer into the Dunmer. Azura would often communicate with the Nerevarine, guiding their path. Boethia, Daedric prince of deceit, conspiracy, treachery, and sedition, is considered to be the god ancestor of the Dunmer people, and many Dunmer associate much of their culture to them. One would be remiss not to mention the House of Troubles. The Dunmer do not worship these deities, rather they acknowledge that they exist in order to test the mettle of the Dunmer. The cunning Malakath, Daedric prince of hexes, curses, and the ostracized. Malakath tests for physical weakness in the Dunmer. The infernal Maroon's Dagon, the Daedric prince of destruction and revolution, represents the inhospitable land of Morrowind and earthquakes and other natural disasters. The diabolical Molag Bal, Daedric prince of corruption, enslavement, and rape, is said to exist to ruin the purity and morals of the Dunmer people. The last of the House of Troubles is Sheogorath, the Daedric prince of madness. He tests the psychological strength of the Dunmer people. Some Dunmer have adopted the Imperial Pantheon, consisting of the 9 divines. Well, 8 divines, depending on who you ask. Dunmer culture is about as alien and abnormal as their homeland. Many, especially those in House Redoran, lived in hollowed-out shells of giant insects and crustaceans. Some even make armor out of chitin and bone. Of course, architecture varies based on the Great House. House Hlalu, and presumably Sadras, use cubic stone structures, and in House Tovani grow giant mushroom towers to live in. Of course, I must talk about the Great House as if I'm going to be talking about the Dunmeri culture. House Redoran focuses on maintaining Dunmer culture, and are more warrior-like than the other Great Houses. Honor, duty, piety, and tradition are quintessential parts of Redoran life. To quote the Great Houses of Morrowind, House Redoran prizes the virtues of duty, gravity, and piety. Duty is to one's own honor, and to one's family and clan. Gravity is the essential seriousness of life. Life is hard, and events must be judged, endured, and reflected upon, with due care and earnestness. Piety is respect for the gods, and the virtues they represent. A light, careless life is not worth living. House Induril is a very orthodox and conservative house, and believes that tradition must be maintained at all costs, and are perhaps the most religious of the Dunmer Great Houses. They are the main supporters of the Tribunal Temple. However, after the Vardenfell crisis, they switched back to worship of the 3 good Daedra. They were said to be the most fanatical supporters of the Tribunal.
3 gods, 1 true faith.
The Telvanni are comprised of arrogant wizards and slaves, and are considered the most xenophobic and isolationist of the Dunmer. And that's saying something. Their morals are much looser than those of other houses. Telvanni members can kill each other legally, steal, and not be prosecuted. These are seen as legitimate and perfectly acceptable means to advance one's position in society. As they believe, might makes right. Despite their flaws, they are some of the most skillful wizards and sorcerers on Tamriel. House Dress focuses most on agriculture, farming, and up until the Oblivion Crisis, the slave trade. The warriors of House Dress are seen by the other houses as amoral and brutal thugs. Many Argonians, Khajiit, and humans have suffered due to their practices. However, it is noted by House Hlalu to be great at making money. Slavery was outlawed in Morrowind at around the time of the Oblivion Crisis. House Hlalu was perhaps the most modern and imperial-like house. They had adopted imperial laws, customs, and culture, and they made quite a fortune off of Quama egg mines, and are the most mercantile of the great houses. Like Dress, they're great at making money, but they maintain a good image. During the Oblivion Crisis, there were not enough Legion troops to protect Morrowind from the invading Daedric hordes, and many died as a result. The other great houses rejected the Empire for failing to protect them, and since House Hlalu had welcomed imperial policies with open arms, they took the brunt of the hate, and slowly began to decline. After the Red Year, House Sadras took their place. The Dunmer venerate their ancestors, and are sometimes able to call upon the spirits of their ancestors to protect them. Family is extremely important to the Dunmer, and they often build large, elaborate tombs for fallen family members. So what do you think about the Dunmer? Ruthless, arrogant savages? Or is there something more to them? This has been a video I've worked very hard on. The idea of this popped into my head around a year ago, and I just started work on it 3 weeks ago. It's been amazing telling you about my favorite Elder Scrolls race. If there's something I forgot, please tell me. Now, if there's any more cultures or types of people from fantasy or video games that you want me to cover, let me know. Anyway, thank you so much. This has been EuclidClassDunmer, and goodbye.